Okay, this is the summary for Lesson 8, which again, the title of Lesson 8 was Rotation Patterns. Now I got carried away with this summary because I saw several things that I wanted to talk about. The first thing is rotating 180 degrees around a center of rotation. What happens to a line segment when you do that? Well, if the center of rotation is on that line segment, and actually if it's the midpoint of that line segment, then the line segment is just going to rotate around and it's going to land right on top of that same line segment. We call that mapping. Where does the line segment land? Where does it map to? And so in this case, that line segment maps to the same line. So that's when the center of rotation is the midpoint of the line segment. Now if the center of rotation is not the midpoint, now the center of rotation, we're going to move that over to here to C. You can take that same line segment and we can do it in parts. I'm going to rotate the left part 180 degrees. It's going to land there or map there. And then I'm going to rotate this right part 180 degrees. I'm using the circle just to keep the size correct, and you can see it rotate 180 degrees around. And you can do that both together, which actually in reality they would move together like this, 180 degrees. So what happens if you have a center of rotation on the line segment but it's not the midpoint? Well, it overlaps. It crosses. It doesn't map exactly to this line segment, but it does overlap with that line segment. So that's the second example. So there it is, and overlaps with the first line segment. Okay, the last example. What if the center of rotation is not on the line segment, it's somewhere other than the line segment? So this one was pretty hard for me to figure out. So I drew these circles. So A is going to rotate from C around the smaller circle, and B is going to rotate from C around the larger circle. And they're going to rotate at the same time. You're just going to rotate around, and you end up with a line segment that does not overlap, but it's parallel to the original line segment. And notice original line segment. Notice where the center of rotation is. It is the midpoint, so when you're dealing with 180 degree rotations, if you connect the corresponding points, so A to A here and B to B here, if you connect those corresponding points, the center of rotation is the midpoint of a line that connects those corresponding points. So the center of rotation is right here. The second part of the summary talks about rotating a triangle and getting a pattern. And I think there's two pieces of information that you needed to really understand this part of the summary. One is that as they rotate this triangle, the authors talk about rotating this triangle 60 degrees at a time. So 60 degrees, 120 degrees, 180 degrees, 240 degrees, and 300 degrees. This is what you would get. You're rotating that triangle around each time. What you are actually rotating are copies of that triangle. So first of all, they need to tell you that you're rotating copies and not just the triangle. And so if you rotate copies of that triangle, now you're going to get this image. The second thing that they needed to really tell you in the summary is where's the center of rotation? Well, it's pretty obvious what they're using as the center of rotation, but it should be stated for you. So you need to know two pieces of information. What's the direction, and where's the center of rotation? And actually the third piece of information, which they do tell you, is what's the number of degrees in that rotation. So these are clockwise rotations, 60 degrees around a center of rotation of A. What if the center of rotation is something other than A? It's off the figure somewhere. So I'm going to make that R right here. So that is a 60 degree rotation. Then take a copy and rotate it 120 degrees. A copy, rotate it 180 degrees. This is a mistake here that we'll come back to later. It should be this triangle right here. Let's see, 240 degrees and 300 degrees. So you get this larger image if you connect those points. if I connect each of the points in the larger image, actually I found out then that this was a mistake that I made. I just got mixed up a little bit. So I have to fix it, just flip it over there and fix it, and you see that the image that you get is an expanded copy of the original hexagon. This is called a dilation, and we're going to talk about dilations in the next unit. So it's taking this image right here and dilating it and making it larger. Maybe you can see the square. Here's or cube. Here's a small cube. If you filled this in right here, you'd see a smaller cube, and here's a larger cube. If you drew this line right here, to kind of highlight that, and actually the line down here would help. All right, summary of Lesson 8, rotating figures.